Have you checked the children? Show a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you have Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to do a review of the brand new A24 release called Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a movie that is based in Europe. Definitely not a U.S. release. It is even subtitled through the whole way, but it is starring Noomi Rapace. How do you say her name?
I have always struggled with hers, but man, she is a fantastic actress that we have seen in countless things, including the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo adaptations over in Sweden. I'm trying to remember if this is somewhere in Scandinavia or a different portion of Europe, but I'm not gonna, put my foot in mouth and embarrass myself. But yes, subtitled Euro, slow burn art house drama thriller, not really horror.
Correct.
That's solid.
The long and short of it is this is not really a horror movie. They bill it in the trailers like it could very well be a horror movie, and there are definitely aspects of this movie that could throw it into the genre. In fact, I'm prepared to say right now, right up front, that there are enough aspects of this movie that I'm willing to consider it a horror movie that just has a very different structure and approach. Look, this is not that different from a lot of found footage movies where you don't see the beast, as it were, until the end of the movie and everything else is just set up in story. And that's not unlike the structure of this film, and so I could see the similarities as far as that goes. But if we're going to get into the film like we normally do, talking about our overall thoughts, then the story, the acting, and the effects, sound design, cinematography, all that good stuff in turn,
Indeed.
I will say that my overall thoughts are I was unfortunately disappointed by this movie. It had two very enigmatic trailers, and
although there is a reveal in one of the trailers
correct,
that kind of gives you
that
the
gives
impression.
away the movie, and you're like, well, that can't be that much of the movie. And unfortunately, what they give away in said trailer is the biggest giveaway of the movie. So this might not be the longest review, quite frankly, because there's not a ton to talk about. It's a very streamlined feature.
But we're also not going to spoil or...
Correct, we're not going to spoil, exactly. But my overall thoughts are, unfortunately, I was disappointed by this. I had high hopes as far as it being a different sort of thing, but this ended up being the A24est A24 movie to ever A24.
I know what you were trying to say.
It.
I am an A24 apologist, as Marcia ridicules me about constantly on this channel. we love you, Marcia. But yeah, this is one that I was not over the moon for even after the trailers, because the vibe was relatively spelled out, and unless they went with some very unexpected stuff, I didn't necessarily think I was going to love this one, man. And I didn't love this one. I definitely did not hate it. One of the biggest strengths, and we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about cinematography and just the way the film was shot, it has some amazing shot selections, and the area in Europe where they decided to film this with like the snow-covered mountains and some of these like rivers and everything else, where this property is located, breathtaking. And there's some of these shots where you see a reflection of somebody in like the trough of the water that they are, serving to these sheep and stuff. And there's also another one where you're looking up through the water at this kid that we slowly get a revelation about. But despite some decent performances, I felt like the storytelling was deliberately minuscule and very subdued and trying to be this sort of slow burn, but yet I wasn't looking for explanation. I was just looking for more development.
Didn't have enough meat on the bone.
Yeah, very much it did not. And so this is accomplished filmmaking, but I still am going to say that probably the biggest diminishing factor was the script and how minimalistic they decided to approach things with. So.
It was very minimalistic. Again, I was not super happy with the whole thing. We didn't even get more than 4 lines of dialogue in the first full half hour of the movie.
Almost 30 minutes, yeah.
And so that was a bit it was interesting.
I didn't
it was
dislike that,
No,
though.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if the rest of the movie's going to be like this too, fine, let's do it. It's almost like a filmmaking exercise.
There was a
But then
building element of
things
mystery.
start to change, and you get more dialogue, and you get more explanation as to what's going on. And ultimately, it ended up losing me. It just wasn't as interesting outside of the first 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, and 5 minutes right basically smack dab in the center of the film. Everything else I didn't really care nearly as much about as those 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's a few beats in this, and I guess we're kind of segueing in the story.
Mm-hmm.
But the first few minutes and the dread and uncertainty that they kind of lay down as the groundwork, and then there's another moment where you're just like, really?
What
Is this
the
really?
fuck?
Is
Like,
this
I even
really
was
gonna
like,
happen?
what the
You and I
fuck?
were both like, wait, what?
Yeah.
We both like kind of
That
leaned
was the
back-
middle 5
leaned
minutes.
back in our chairs because this was a screener. We were, very honored. And,
Yes, thank you to
very,
Allied.
very happy to have been sent by Allied. But yeah, that emotion was it was this ebb and flow of trying to give you, I don't even want to say a false sense of security, but it was just kind of trying to bring it down to earth, I guess is maybe a better way of putting it, and exploring the interpersonal aspects of everything involved. And so it didn't do it for me. So
Yeah. Not really me neither. So the story, long and short of it, is there's this couple that is out farming on a sheep farm by themselves, working together on a daily basis to handle the chores and necessities that the farm requires. And
sprawling property too, which made me wonder how they were able to do it with just two of them. As
so with
opposed
the
to-
amount of sheep that they have, there's obviously breeding, and so they're regularly delivering new baby sheep, new lambs, to the flock, as it were, and or herd, I guess. But nonetheless, one day there is an odd member of the family born, and the mother and father take particular affinity to it and start to try and raise it.
Let's just say a birth defect.
Exactly, yes. We don't want to spoil too much. If you watch the trailer, it's spoiled what happens, but without saying it,
Which with the way that it's structured, and you don't find out what's really going on with this.
till about 45 to 50 minutes into the movie.
It's almost halfway into the film when
Yep.
you find out what
This is an hour and
actually going
46
on.
minute long movie, and stuff, you don't even know what's actually going on until about minute 50 or so.
Yeah, it's concealed deliberately so, which is why I found the trailer, which was presumably cut by a different company, and A24 just needed to give that little hint, that little taste to get audiences interested.
Unfortunately, that little hint really gives you a lot of the movie when you sit and think about what that hint is telling you.
Big time.
And so ultimately the film wasn't that surprising, it wasn't that groundbreaking. It was interesting, but even at that, it's a bit frustrating because there are things that we've seen in other movies where there's two brothers and a female involved, where there's contention there, and how does that all play out when it comes to this irregular member of the family? And unfortunately, the story just there wasn't enough meat on that bone for me to find the story engaging enough to justify it.
Yeah, and the biggest issue that I maybe had, well, maybe not the largest issue, but like a significant one, was the fact that this brother of the significant other of Numi Rapace shows up, and yet how he arrives is very
Never
strange,
explained.
and we get no
Never explained.
indication as to why or how. There's 2 lines of dialogue. They're like, about debts and so on and so forth, and that's about the only time that it's
Never
addressed.
explained, never touched on again.
Yeah, never besides that one particular scene. And yet there is a compelling aspect where the standoffishness and borderline hatred of him initially it comes to a head, and you think it's going one way, and
That was the middle 5 minutes.
and yes, that was another compelling beat within this, but it's very much just an examination of the fact that Numi and her partner, when we first meet them, they're barely talking to each other, they're just working, and they're like, oh, time travel is apparently a thing now, and they're struggling
so that's why they would
they're
say
struggling to
go back
even-
to the past. So that does
they were
lend to the thing
happier.
we were talking about.
They were happier
That lends to
earlier
the-
in their
to our
relationship, presumably.
Guesses.
Yeah, and we have other guesses about there is a graveyard scene, without spoiling stuff.
in the
where-
trailer.
It's in the trailer, but it's when you see a particular name and the correlation within that name that makes you wonder that better times were like behind them, unfortunately.
Correct.
And so they are brought together with this birthing of sorts that they discover and helping to raise it, obviously. And so, interesting ideas. I will definitely say that.
Segue into the acting for me.
Segue into the acting. Numi is great. She's always been very solid in my estimation. It's not one of her greater performances, in my opinion, and her significant other, we're never really verified if it's like a husband or if it's just a longtime boyfriend or whatever. When they were standoffish at first, I was even wondering if they were like brother and sister or something, with how strangely asexual and separate their existence was. Like one was working at night, one was working daytime or whatever. The brother who throws the, I don't know, just weirdness into the situation, he was okay as well. And there is a very goofy scene that, dare I say, feels very out of place within the vibe of the entire movie when it happens at like the end of the second act, like beginning of the third act, because it's broken into 3 chapters. But yeah, acting was competent, solid, not bad by any means, but all of this like kind of veers back to the script, unfortunately.
Yeah, the acting is, I think, one of the most solid things about the film, but yeah,
Truly.
it does truly circle back to the script, and that's where the lack of interest sort of came from, unfortunately. And there was not much we could do about that, but experience what they had to bear in front of us. So
I have to say the acting of our sheep and our dog and our cat was really, really good.
sure, yeah. So
It was.
well trained.
Yeah, and they say that the toughest things that you can work with are children and with animals.
Yep.
And so I was really wondering, well, it was obviously a child, I mean, do you want to segue into effects? Or do you want to...
Yeah, no, go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, because you can tell that to create what we see...
There is some effects involved.
Most definitely. Of the digital variety.
Digital effects,
For
yes.
this to actually work. And whether it was close-ups or whether it was, far-away stuff, I think a decent amount of the budget, because they just found a beautiful location and shot pretty much everything there. So I would imagine a good amount of the budget went to that transformative...
It's one of those
sort of
minimalized effects where... It's an effect where every time it's on screen, it's costing the filmmakers money, but it's such a low-key effect that you want people to believe is a real thing.
It convinced
that,
me.
Yeah, it just, you don't feel like it's an effect. Unfortunately for me, I felt like it was an effect the entire way. I feel like one of my problems with the film was the actual presentation of said effect. I was just ultimately a bit disappointed with that particular aspect of this, but ultimately it was still a fun experience for me. But for the most part it was good, but there were just some issues that weren't necessarily 100% the entire way through.
Yeah, and as far as the shoot selection, as far as like basically where they did this is so breathtakingly majestic.
Wherever in Europe that they shot this, it was gorgeous.
Holy goodness,
and
man.
the cinematography almost didn't matter, except that it was gorgeous through the whole thing.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is the location was beautiful enough that it almost didn't matter where they put the camera. It was going to be a gorgeous shot.
Yeah, because there was a lot of still like shots that didn't move or
correct.
anything.
But to give credit where credit is due, the cinematography of the film was outstanding. It was really gorgeous. Pretty through the whole thing. Told the story well. No issues with the cinematography by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, which is really pretty much a hallmark of A24. Like they always,
It's true.
Even if they have these slow burn, and so A Ghost Story is a film with Rooney Mara
I still haven't
and
seen
with
that.
Casey Affleck. It doesn't have that much similarity of identity, but it's about relationship and reconfiguration and things of that nature in my estimation. And that film worked so much better for me than this one, which was obviously about two people trying to reconnect through an external new presence within their lives that they were caring for. And so a little bit different in the romantic regard with A Ghost Story, but I'm fine with those slow burn, like kind of not really horror at all sort of situations. And this one tried to do that throughout a good chunk of the middle portion in my estimation, and yet it was bookended by what I dare say wanted the movie to be. This could have veered into more interesting full-on horror territory without getting into it. And music and score and so on and so forth, it was very subtle. Since we listened to it with headphones on the screener that we got, I have to say that
It's always better.
Yeah, it's always better, and I felt those nuances because it was
specifically
really
when when something else happened.
Yeah, there was a little like musical cue or
musical
like
cue and deep breathing and just a general growl
Yeah. It's not prevalent.
But if you're listening for it, you'll hear it.
Yeah,
And
but for the moments that the
that's
filmmaker
good sound design.
intended to be pivotal, you felt that like very dark sort of like, I don't know, just an ominous sort of sound. It was almost of a discordant variety.
Yep.
There is a funny scene where there's a revisiting of some music from the brother of this guy, which was amusing. But yeah, aside from that, the sound design was solid, but there was not like a prevalent score that would be immediately recognizable and something that you would want to throw on while you're writing or working, on something different or whatever. So there was a lot that was good about this, but I still have to veer back to the fact that I didn't like the script very much. I think that's my biggest gripe. So
I can agree with that. I think it's a good idea, and if you had taken the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes and that middle 5 minutes and expanded on what you got in those segments of the movie, it could have been really fantastic. Unfortunately, it chose to focus on some of the less interesting parts of the overall story, and so it didn't work for me as a grand total. If this was redone and done as a straight-up horror movie, I think this could be a badass fucking movie.
So American remake, maybe?
As it is, that's not what we got, unfortunately. Now, there are absolutely, I feel like, going to be people that think this is a fucking masterpiece inside and out. And
more power to you, and art is
great
subjective.
for you guys. Absolutely. Art is subjective. We're just talking about this from having watched it ourselves, a screener here in the house, not in a big theater, and it just ended up being a bit boring, unfortunately. It didn't do what we were hoping to do. It was interesting enough to give a watch once, but beyond that, I don't know that this is going to be a mainstay in my household.
Neither. It's not, and yet for the theater experience, it's not like a big-time crowd pleaser sort of situation. This is the kind of thing that I am more okay with watching on a smaller screen.
This is a great paired with, there's what is it, Something at Night? What is that one?
They Come at Night. This Comes at Night.
This Comes at Night. Yeah, whatever that one was. Yeah. The other really disappointing A24 movie. This is a great double feature with that one.
They have made a lot of terrific stuff, though.
It Comes at Night.
It Comes at Night. That's it. Yeah. I'm thinking of the other movie that we're about to review, which is something different on Netflix. But yeah. There you have it, peeps. That is our thoughts.
So that's
on
our
Lamb.
thoughts on Lamb. Unfortunately, it didn't end up being as groundbreaking as we were really hoping it would be. Look, the last A24 movie we reviewed on the channel was The Green Knight. I really appreciated that film, but there were still issues I had with it. A24 always seems to have kernels of genius that are somehow squandered in some way, shape, or form. Not always the case, but sometimes, and unfortunately, this is one of those.
Regrettably, I agree as well.
But thank you guys so much for watching our thoughts on Lamb. Thank you to Allied for providing us a link to be able to watch this movie early to do a review. We were very interested in it. Unfortunately, it just didn't end up being what we were hoping it would be. And I feel like if you're watching us here at the Horror Show, you may feel the same way. However, go in, watch this film, make your decision yourself. It's not terribly long. It doesn't feel like it's a waste of time. It just wasn't for us.
Yes.
Any final thoughts on it, Fuego?
Yeah, make up your own mind. Check it out. And hey, don't take our word for it. That's the one thing that I always contend. So.
Indeed. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. We are going to be recording our review for There's Someone Inside Your House, or The House. I'm not sure which it is, but that review will already be up by the time you see this. So go and check that out if you missed it. Otherwise, stay tuned this Sunday. Oh, what is this Sunday?
I think
this Sunday, yes, this Sunday we are doing our special Chucky episode where Cody Leach is confirmed to be the guest, where we're going to talk about the Chucky series leading into the Chucky series. And it's going to be good fun. We're going to get Cody's tier list ranking after we have aired our Chucky tier list ranking the night before. So it's going to be good fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.